Taking responsibility is something that I always stress, and it's actually a very important part of the 4 steps of integrative processing. It's the important part of the first step. Taking responsibility, to me, means taking emotional responsibility for the feelings that are coming up, for my feelings that are coming up. It means not blaming basically people or circumstances around us. It means understanding that the people that we're drawn to, the circumstances that we're drawn to, we're really drawn to these circumstances and people in order to bring up the feelings that are already within, that are latent within, that are stored in the subconscious. So the emotions that come up for us whenever we get involved in certain situations, taking responsibility or owning the feelings means recognizing that the feelings are already within, suppressed from some previous time, and that the situation that we're involved in now is just bringing up the feelings. Whether it's feelings of loneliness or anger or frustration, you can think how differently different people would react in similar situations, and that may give you an insight into whatever your particular reaction is in a situation. We always assume that there's a projection, that we're projecting our experience, projecting it from whatever is suppressed within. So that's what I think of when I think of taking responsibility. I've seen that phrase misused or misunderstood, and that's really what I wanted to focus on today. It's so easy to misunderstand taking responsibility and to interpret that as a sense of blaming yourself. And blaming yourself is basically the same thing as beating yourself up for what you perceive to be mistakes that you've made or the negative experiences that you're going through. It's this kind of self-condemnation, this judgment about yourself. Taking responsibility does not mean blaming yourself. Just like blaming someone outside yourself is an avoidance of the feelings that are within. See, blaming someone outside of yourself is a mechanism that we use in order to turn away from the inner experience. And the inner experience is basically the feelings that are coming up in any particular situation. In order to turn away from that experience, which is the exact opposite of what we should do, in order to integrate and clarify and have the feelings clear, we almost instinctively, because the feelings are painful, we turn away from them without really knowing any better, without knowing that we really should open to the feelings in the right way to allow the feelings to clear. Turning away from them is accomplished through various mechanisms, and one of them is blame. When you blame someone else, you're no longer looking within, you're no longer taking responsibility, and the feelings again get suppressed. Blaming yourself is just a variation of blaming someone outside yourself. It's the same kind of blame dynamic. And this happens in the mind, not in the emotional body. It's the mind that blames in order to set up the defense against feeling. And whether you're blaming someone outside yourself or blaming yourself, which is also called guilt, it really makes no difference. If you're experiencing guilt, if you look at yourself closely, maybe you could see that the blame that you're directing towards yourself, even if you're doing it in the name of taking responsibility, a misunderstood notion of taking responsibility, if you're blaming yourself, if you're experiencing guilt, usually that's done in sort of a self-serving way. It's done in order to protect ourselves from the deeper realization of the feelings that are behind the guilt. That may be a little hard to understand, but it's that blame mechanism being redirected towards ourselves. It's the mechanism of the mind. Once the mind locks into blame, it shuts off access to the deeper feeling areas. So being locked into blaming yourself shuts off and protects you from experiencing those deeper feelings. Taking responsibility is often talked about these days, and it's very easy to fall into the trap of simply saying, okay, well that means I'm no good, I'm responsible for what's happening to me. In other words, I'm blaming myself instead of blaming someone else. So blaming yourself may be a sort of a step forward if you've been blaming everybody else in the past, but it's still far from where you want to be in terms of your relationship with yourself. So being hard on yourself, judging yourself, condemning yourself, all in the name of taking responsibility, is you're misapplying the concept of responsibility. Feelings are suppressed from previous times, and these feelings attract events and people to us. And there's a sort of a predestination effect regarding these events. We attract only the kinds of events that correspond to the feelings that we're holding within. If we're holding in a sense of loss, let's say, a sense of insecurity, a sense of loss, what often happens is that we become compulsive about seeking material gain. Or in New Age terms, we become compulsive about seeking prosperity without really recognizing that what's motivating us to do that is the sense of loss or worthlessness or the feeling of being worth less inside. And that feeling of being worth less inside then attracts to us situations that confirm the feeling of being worthless. That's how it works. We attract the situation in order to, metaphysically speaking, in order to have the situation work on us, bring up the feeling. So we have no control, really, over our experience until we've released the negative emotional and feeling energy, which is being held within, which is attracting the events. People in New Age circles often say if you simply change your beliefs, you'll change your experience. That's really a gross oversimplification of what's really happening. It's not really your beliefs, it's really the feelings and the emotions that are behind the beliefs and that actually sustain the beliefs. It's those feelings and emotions that attract events to you. Feelings is where the power is, not in the thoughts. Thoughts and feelings are two different things. And beliefs are yet another thing. Beliefs belong to the intellect, another area of the personality. So when you're locked into a negative emotional feeling that's suppressed and unconscious, hasn't been brought into consciousness, that unconscious energy is still going out and attracting experiences to you. And it's the kind of experience that's going to support the negative energy. You'll attract experiences in which you will experience loss on a material level because that's what you need in order to bring up the feelings of worthlessness, insecurity that are already latent within you. So if you then blame yourself for your experience, if you say, I must really be a worthless person because here I am, I've done this thing again. You know, I've lost more money in the stock market. I've done something stupid. So I must really be worthless. That's the wrong idea. That self-condemnation is just a mechanism. It's a conditioned way of thinking that we adopt we don't really understand what it does for us consciously, but we do it because it blocks the access to the feelings that are deeper and that are behind the whole situation. So I just want you to remember that taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself or beating yourself up. for what's happened. It doesn't mean that you were deliberately causing something that may be apparently bad to happen to yourself or other people. It just means that you've got these negative feelings inside that are attracting and manifesting these negative situations. So taking responsibility, view that as owning the feelings that are happening within you. Stopping thinking that it's something outside of you that's causing the feelings. Stop blaming things that are happening around outside of you. Understand that the feelings that is within. Stop beating yourself. Stop beating yourself up. Stop criticizing yourself. Stop condemning yourself. And then use a productive approach to work with the feelings. If you don't have the productive approach, either working with a counselor of some sort or doing a self-therapy approach, it's going to be very hard to get past the blame, the self-blame, and the guilt syndrome because you have nothing else to substitute for it. Once you drop the blame and the guilt, just like dropping any other kind of addictive behavior, that behavior has been shielding you from those feelings within. Even though it's a destructive conditioned pattern to be immersed in guilt or blame, it still does shield you from the feelings. So if you stop it, you need some way to work with the feelings. And that's what I've written about, that's what I work with, that's what we're about when I work with clients. And that's what you can do on your own once you know the approach.